Every single year, somebody will tell you that this is the best Chelsea flower show ever. Well, I don't suppose they can all be the best, but this year, I honestly think, is the one. The huge 4-acre marquee, despite the cold weather, is packed with the most fabulous flowers in the peak of condition. And the gardens are more varied, more original, and more packed with ideas than I can ever remember. This charming cottage garden could be in Dorset or Devon, yet one glance at the house behind tells you immediately that it actually comes from across the pond. This is Fiona Lawrenson's New England cottage garden built for B-Sky B. Now, Fiona, the New England climate is very different from ours, and yet a lot of these plants seem familiar. Are they going to stand their hard winters?
Yes, the plants have been carefully selected, and I've taken a lot of the traditional cottage garden favourites over in America. Of course, a lot of them came over from England originally, but they've really taken them to their hearts. For instance, peonies, which look so delicate, are really quite tough and resilient little plants.
So, in fact, this garden could provide a lot of lessons for people who live in Scotland and perhaps colder areas. What sort of plants would you recommend?
Well, things like the bleeding heart, it looks such a delicate plant, but it always starts to show its little face in January, February, emerging from the ground, and then it sends up these wonderful, graceful brackets. That's a tough and resilient little plant. Things like the Veronica gentianoides, again, that looks so delicate, but that's quite resilient. And my favourite are the little aquilegias that just bob up everywhere, and they're quite good because once they've settled, they'll self-seed everywhere, so you get a very natural effect.
Now, this is only, what, your second garden at Chelsea, and yet I reckon it's one of the best in the show. Does this mean that you spent months in America researching it?
I'd love to have spent months in America. By the time I decided where I wanted to go and who I was going to stay with, fall had already happened. There was absolutely nothing left. So it was a case of speaking to a lot of people at very inconvenient times in America, because I kept getting the time span mixed up. And having sent over lots of faxes with information and lots of books. So the amount of research that went into it was enormous.
Well, there are lots of course, Americans in exile in England. Did you get any help here?
I met an amazing man called Charles Elliott. And poor Charles, I'd ring him up and say, "Hi, it's me again. Do you think you could just run over a few details with me?" And he was so helpful. He didn't know me from Adam, and he was just so helpful.
Is this really a genuine New England cottage garden?
Yes, I think so. You might not find one as closely planted as this in New England, but certainly the plants themselves are very authentic, it seems to me, very appropriate, and very attractive. I've noticed a few bits that might be questioned. I seem to have spotted a wallflower in there someplace. To my knowledge, you don't see many wallflowers in New England because they're not quite hardy enough for our winters. But the rest of it's fine, and the house itself is absolutely marvelous.
In complete contrast is Dan Pearson's roof garden built for the Evening Standard. Now, this is very modern and what I think they call minimalist. It's got very strong, straight lines, and they're all softened and contrasted with this lovely, soft planting here. I certainly could live down this end of the garden, but the furniture and the containers, well, I'm not so sure. But of course, the great art of these gardens is the feeling of permanence that they give, and that hides the heartache and the hassle that went into making them. And none more so than Julie Toll's forest garden.
Finding the trees was pretty tricky, actually. I rang round all my contacts in the nursery trade and she said, yeah, we know an overgrown forest in Surrey. It's actually a nursery where nobody attended the trees and they were all designated for the scrap heap. We lifted the trees in December time, and we actually created a prototype garden so that I could actually imagine what they'd look like. So if I pace out 5 metres, I knew the garden was bigger than I'd ever done at Chelsea before, but boy, 50 by 40 feet's pretty big. And the thought that I, with one other lady, I'm going to be on my hands and knees, oh, I've got to plant all this. So it's huge and it's a bit daunting. Well, it's Chelsea again, Marnie, you'll be pleased to hear.
Joy of joys, what have you got this
The
year?
dream of the woodland was one thing, but then having to decide what to plant was okay until I had to come up with a species list. So I went off to various nurseries and selected various species, and I had to have wet-loving plants, then dry-loving plants. So a lot of homework and discussion went into that, and everything had to be got going in October at least.
Well, you know, come May, this will be full with all the stuff for Chelsea. Hopefully not flowering too early.
Yes, because I know if we have them a week early, we might as well just chuck them in the bin.
Oh, that's
No
right.
good for the
yeah,
judges.
No good for the judging, no.
I can't believe that tiny little plant's going to make it.
Oh, it's surprising. That should be flowering come May.
One of the other areas within the garden will be a meadow, and this is what I need grass for. Have you got 200, do you
Yes.
think, amongst this weedy patch here?
Yes, no, we can certainly sell. There's easily 100 here. We can lift those quite easily into trays.
Whoa. Tony, he's not going to make it without wrecking the tree here. There's no way that'll go through. And then the fun really began, trying to put the first tree in. No, it's not worth. Yeah. Please, don't drop. That whole root ball of 5 tons is just hanging on one hook on the crane, and we've got to try and pull it in this direction to get it a little bit more upright without that hook breaking. Before we started planting, I went off to the wildflower nursery with my list that we'd prepared and of the plants I was hoping to see in flower. And it was pretty daunting because when I got there, I just saw a carpet of green and my heart sank. There is no way in a million years there's going to be a flower there in the next week.
No, you're quite right about that. I'll go along with that. And we've actually got, it's Sunday, isn't it? So we've got a week to Judgment Day.
Yeah, but we've got to have them
Flowering.
I mean, we're not going to have much on site before
Thursday.
Thursday, are we?
No.
Oh, gosh. Well, about 30. Yes. Oh, OK, so let's say 20 then. I'm just phoning everybody I know and saying, just give me a list of any plant that's in flower. I just keep creating as I go along, and I won't stop till the last plant's in and the judges say, out of the garden, it's all over.
Well, Julie, you did finally make it, and I must say that the trees look as though they've been here for about 100 years. But Chelsea claims to be the showcase for British gardening. Now, is this really a garden?
Well, it's not a garden in the sense that a lot of us Brits think, but it is a forest that's been gardened, and I want people to understand that if you have all these lovely trees in your garden, why cut them down? Why not use them and add cultivated and wildflowers and make a garden out of a forest or a natural habitat?
In the front here, you've got a bit of an acid bog. What's that about?
Well, that's because in a forest you get damp acid hollows, and I want to say to people, don't get rid of them. Use the lovely heathers and mosses and lichens and add to them things like Iris sibirica and the little yellow iris and rushes and reeds and make it look more beautiful.
Well, you're using a lot of flowers in grass here, and you've got what is almost a wildflower meadow but lots of cultivated plants in there as well. Now, is that okay to do that?
Yes, it's fine, as long as you use the right species, and if you need to check, it's a very good idea to go back to your native flora and see if there's any relationship. Like these salvias here, there's a wild salvia, the meadow clary, and this is Salvia May Night, so these should survive. The geums here as well are cultivated and they work well, and I love the pink-flowered Gladiolus byzantinus.
They are absolutely superb, aren't they, those?
You might think that to produce a stunning display like that, you'd need a large commercial nursery, teams of people, and every piece of high-tech equipment going, just to bring the blooms to the peak of perfection on judging day. Well, in this instance, you'd be wrong. All these lupins were grown in the back garden here, behind this ordinary house near Stratford on Avon, in a small family nursery run by brothers Morris and Brian Woodfield. For 30 years they've run a nursery here, growing carnations and delphiniums as well as lupins. For most of that time it was just a hobby, and it's only for the last 5 years, since they both retired, that they've been able to concentrate on it full time. Even so, in the 11 years they've been exhibiting at Chelsea, they've managed to win no less than 9 gold medals for their lupins. And the family helps out. Morris's wife Judy works in the nursery full time, and so does Brian's wife Anne. And their daughter Rosalind helps out whenever she can.
Here we are then, and you can come and see them all for yourself, just coming out, ready for Chelsea.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. If we were beginning to sweat and worry, are we going to get there?
Yes, I can imagine that must be a bit nail-biting.
It is, when we have bad tempers and so forth at night. Anybody speaks out of turn, they get snapped at, sort of thing. But anyway, we're here, and that's the new variety that's going to Chelsea, make its debut at Chelsea. It hasn't been shown before. It comes out white and then gradually gets this blush pink. Consequently, we call it Blushing Bride. And this is another new one. That is one called Scarrots, named after a greengrocer's shop. The gentleman who owns the greengrocer's shop has got a racehorse called Scarrots, and that is his racing colours.
What makes a good lupin? What do you look for?
Well, the first thing, we'd like them that they don't need staking. The old-fashioned lupin used to go to about 3 or 4 foot. Then you get a full bloom, about 2 or 3 foot on the top. Long come the wind, unless it was staked, and down they come. Now, the new generation of lupins don't need staking at all. They grow to about 18 inches high, and incidentally, these, because they're grown on the glass, are even higher than what they would be out in your garden. A flower on the lupin consists of the bell, which is that front little bit, and the piece at the back, which is called the keel. Now, on the old lupins, the old world lupins, the keel used to open up and then fold back, point back. On a modern lupin, the keel stops completely out, hence you get a full solid bloom and you can't look through it. But the main feature, they mustn't die off at the bottom until the top is completely out. Is that better?
It's better. Lupins did go out of fashion, didn't they, for a bit? Why do you think that was?
Well, I think the main thing is that people had the impression that lupins change colour. Lupins never change colour. What we insist to people when they buy our plants, as soon as the flower's dead, you cut the old dead flowers off. People didn't do that. They let them make seed, and the seed used to drop down onto the top of the plant, grow on top of the plant, and hence another come. Because a lupin is a hybrid, they're mongrels. No matter what colour you save the seed from, they don't come true to colour.
So how did you come to breed this new generation strain of lupins?
I got as many of the old George Russell varieties as I could, but unfortunately most of them were full of virus, and I finished up with about 3 varieties. From those 3, I started to do cross-pollination, and eventually came up with a Korean variety, which was the best one we raised, and all these varieties that you see here today have all come from this one variety which we named after my daughter Deborah. And that is the mother, the father and everything else of all the complete strain. It's amazing where you can get scarlet flowers from cream flowers, but they eventually come, yeah.
What are you looking for now?
Always looking for new colours, like we get a new break this year. We've got an apricot named after Brian's daughter called Rosalind. It comes out a parchment colour, and this beautiful apricot colour gradually develops as the flower gets older.
Because lupins don't come true from seed, if you want named varieties, you have to take cuttings. And, as Brian demonstrates, it really couldn't be easier. It's maybe a silly question, Brian, but why are you putting those cuttings into the stuff I insulate my loft with?
Well, over the years, we were losing quite a few of the cuttings, just damping off and rotting off. And we found out through various means that it was caused by so much dirt and disease in the peat. And so we had a word with a few scientists and experts, and they came up with this idea of using the rock wool. And since we've been using it this year, we found that we've lost virtually no plant at all. And just trace the cutting down to where it joins onto the crown, and then take it off with a sharp knife. And then we trim the old big tall leaves away, leave some so they get some oxygen. We dip it in the rooting hormone, and we can just put them into these modules like so. And then after about a week to 10 days, you'll suddenly see a new growth forming. That means they have started to root. The beauty of this, you don't have to dig them out or disturb them, you just literally lift them out. And if they haven't rooted, you can just pop them back in again. We generally start off with about 1,400. Those are special ones for Chelsea. And then, of course, they're potted on and into a 1 litre pot, and then we go into a 4 litre pot. And then we can get some idea when they're growing away if they're going to make Chelsea. And we take about 800 into the greenhouse.
Gosh.
And that's to get approximately 150 for our exhibit at Chelsea.
And here they are. There's Jack Wood in military red and white, and Rosalind Woodfield in soft feminine apricot. This is the Daily Telegraph garden designed by David Stevens, and the plants that really hit you in the eye are the rhododendrons. They're just at their peak for Chelsea this year, and of course they're one of the more popular shrubs grown by Dutch nurserymen. Anthony Henn.
Boskoop lies just south of Amsterdam, and this is the area where the whole of the Dutch shrub growing industry began about 500 years ago. Now, for an area famous for growing shrubs that love this rich, peaty soil, it makes sense to come here to this family-run nursery that boasts about 900 rhododendrons on its list. Are these just stock plants, or are these for sale?
No, those are all for sale.
Uh-huh.
And you can see that there are quite a number of varieties. All these labels, small quantities. Danish Blue is a British variety and quite a hardy one. The problem with some of the British varieties is that they are not so hardy in our climate. But Danish Blue, I think, is an excellent one. Lovely color, good foliage, and I think very worthy to the trade. As a young boy, I always went with my father taking cuttings, and the smell of this foliage is so good that I always remembered that and became a nurseryman.
I see some of them are looking a little bit like they're burnt or something.
No, it's drought. We have had quite a severe winter, maybe not so cold, but the duration was extreme. It started off in the end of November and it lasted up until end of March, and that was too much, really.
One reason for the success of the Boskoop growers is the sheer depth and fertility of the soil.
I could go further, but this is a 6-foot cane, and it goes in rather easily. But there's another 12 or 15 meters of peat left. Depending on the plants you're growing, we use fertilizer, but not in big quantities, really, because this soil is really rich.
And the rhododendrons?
No, manure mainly.
So you can obviously lift them when they're in flower?
Yeah, sure, why not? They have very compact root systems, and they haven't started growing yet. They start growing when they're out of flowers. And now you can see what they will look like.
So as long as they're watered well in the garden?
Yeah, you have to do that logically, especially in such a dry season as this season. But then there's no problem. Also the plants in your own garden that you want to move, just move them now. No problem. Another tip for gardeners is to take out the old flowers. Because if you leave them on, the seeds will develop and it will spend a lot of energy producing seeds which you don't want. You want growth. So therefore, in the nursery, we take all these buds out. It's a heck of a job, I'd say, because we have 20,000 rhododendrons to do still. But so if you could give me a hand.
Yeah, sure.
You can also take out these single-stemmed growing buds, because if you take these out, you have these sleeping buds under it, and they will develop into new branches. And so that will give it a more bushy plant as well.
Right. What about if you want to chop them right back to encourage them? What happens then?
You can do that, but this is much easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it has the same effect.
Or if you've got a very old bush, which is tall and bare.
Then just cut it back.
Okay.
You can be pretty radical in it, because they respond to it quite well.
If you've got 8 feet of peat, I would say it's fine to shift rhododendrons in flower, but if you haven't, I think I'd be a bit more careful. I should be a bit careful how I walk through this arch too. This is the Wychford pottery stand, one of many sundry stands here at the show, and isn't it fun? But at the end of the day, it's the gardens that really fascinates me. And this little garden of rooms, designed by John Plummer for the Daily Mirror, is packed with ideas for small gardens. It's divided into a whole series of rooms, which could actually make the garden look a lot smaller. But to avoid that, there's a vista from each little room into the next one. And the thing that really takes the eye up the vista in this one is that lovely cordyline at the end there. There's another vista right across the eating area, and through the middle here, what catches the eye at that end is that wonderful working water clock.